You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
Welcome to Fair Enterprise, the road to economic freedom. I'm joined here with the legendary, one of Canada's most successful entrepreneurs, Frank Stronach, the Magna Man, who created a company with over 180,000 employees and 40 billion in sales. Thank you, Mr. Stronach, for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here. It's great to talk to you from time to time, Ivana. As you know, the economic chart is very much on my mind, and it's basically my mission, right? That's my contribution. I think I like to make to Canada, and I'd like to see that Canada is the first country in the world which will adopt an economic charter of rights in its constitution.
So you have embarked on your biggest, boldest initiative so far, and that is to bring an economic charter of rights to Canada. Why do you think it is so important for us to have an economic charter?
I think it's so important, and I think why our sessions here, where we exchange ideas, I'd like to explain why it's so important, right? First, I think we have to understand that the world has always been ruled by the golden rule. Who has the gold or the money makes the rule. You see, now you don't see the kings no more. They might be in Hawaii, they might be in Beverly Hills, they might be in Monaco, but they're there. The very rich do not want to share the profits with the working class. That is the dilemma.
One of the principles that you have in the economic charter is profit sharing, and you incorporated profit sharing at Magna. What happened when you incorporated profit sharing at Magna, and how is that going to have a positive impact on both small business owners as well as the average Canadian if we had profit sharing as part of an economic charter in Canada?
Basically, what it boils down to, the economic charter, is profit sharing, right? And it's great that all politicians and pretty well all business people share the thought. If the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. But amazingly, we do not talk what drives the economy. This is the most important subject. So,
you've said multiple times that you see a looming recession that's going to be affecting Canadians in the coming months, maybe next year from now. What makes you think that there's a looming recession?
Well, usually there's signs, right? There's signs on the economic horizon, and you see it, they're so obvious now, huh? You know, when you look back 50 years ago, when the first computers came on the market, the slogan was, if you got one of those computers, you could eliminate a total office floor. Now, when I look around in the cities, it doesn't matter if it's Europe or Canada, the United States, I see many more office towers in the cities. I would say at least 20 more office towers than 50 years ago. So we got to ask ourselves, what did they do in there? They don't make any products in there. Okay, so it's basically what we have. We have regulations, and financial transactions. That doesn't create a living standard. Okay, that reduces the living standards.
Do you think an economic charter can safeguard Canadians against the effects of this looming recession?
Well, it's basically what can safeguard the economy is if management works together with the workers, with the employees, to make good products, better products for a better price. That's what it's all about, right? So, but we can only do that if we have less regulations, right? Right now, my worries are now we have practically more regulators than working people, because there's millions of regulators, right? But you look at all the cities, from Vancouver to Montreal to Toronto, and all the high rises there, like it's enormous, right? So the problem we created too many regulations. When I look back about 65 years ago when I built my first factory, I rented a small empty, it looked like a large garage, right? And I put a sign up there, tool and die making, open for business. I didn't have to need any forms or any documents or any. I just went out and I went in the factories and I said, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve the problems, you don't have to pay me. So obviously, I solved problems because after 1 month I hired somebody, after a year I had about 10 people, and after 2 years, 20 people.
And that was the start of you building your empire, Magna.
That was sort of, yes, really, when we look, society came a long way. When we look back from the caveman to the hunter and hunted, to the kings and the servants, and now we have an environment, what I would call the bosses and unhappy employees. So I think the reason why I've done so well is I always consider my employees as my partners, okay?
Do you think that mindset of including your employees into profit sharing and the mindset of treating them like partners, is what really led to this exponential growth in Magna?
That's what it's all about. That's what the economic charter is all about. Basically, what I'm trying to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit.
Do you think it's feasible for businesses to now start incorporating profit sharing nationwide?
It's of course it's feasible, and I'm a perfect role model for that, right? And but let me I'd like to point out, small companies have always been the backbone of Canada, or well, every country. It's small business, right? And
how would you define a small business? Is that the mom and pop down the street?
No. Let's say companies with less than 300 employees. Let's say from one employee up, somewhere along the line. When I started, I was the only employee, right? Okay. So small business I would define as 300 employees or less, right? So basically, I'd like to wake up small businesses and say, look, you're so important to the country. You hold the future of Canada in your hands. You can change it, because if they would band together, they're huge, right? With their families, they'd be maybe a $2 million voting bloc, right? If they band together, they could make a lot of changes which are absolutely necessary for the economy to function.
Do you think small businesses should become a lobbying group for the economic charter?
Well, not so much a lobbying, more or less, when I look back, sometimes you look back and say, are there role models? Who's done it right? Who run a great country? Who was a great politician? So when I look back, For me, Winston Churchill stood out, the Prime Minister of England, right? He was more than a politician, I would call a statesman. In his later years, he's always said, pardon my language now, but that's what he's saying, damn it, he said, Parliament doesn't work. He said, in Parliament you only have politicians, and the mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. He said, that means the whole country is managed by political reasons rather than economic reasons. So he said, Parliament can only work if we create a chamber of citizens to balance out the politician. But that is very cumbersome, and I think what I have in mind and what I would like to recommend is that small business basically would be the chamber of citizens in Canada. Okay, so I think that would work, right?
It would balance out the political initiatives with an economic perspective.
Because that would be purely economic, right? And it still would leave many issues where politicians could solve, right? But the most important thing is, if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. It's the economy, the economy, the economy.
You often talk about unchaining small business by removing a business tax. Would this also benefit Canadians as a whole, not just small business owners? Do you think that unchaining small businesses would allow for better paying jobs for the average Canadian?
I think if small business does well, the whole country will do well, right? Because small business, they would all operate on a level playing field. Right now, the playing fields are not level, right? And perhaps we usually carry a book about the income tax. Do we have one here by any chance? Can somebody bring me that? I would like to point something out. So this is the Income Tax Act, huh? Okay, it's
wow, how many pages are in there?
It's thousands, but it's more. Each page has huge amount of paragraphs, right? I mean, it's, when you look in there, and I like to remind people, they should borrow a copy or get a copy and should look in there. There's thousands and thousands of pages which are so convoluted, which I believe it only serves special interest groups. We need an Income Tax Act or system where every citizen would understand what it is. Because if people don't understand it's so complicated, how can you have a country? Okay, it should be. There's an old saying, keep it simple, smarty. Okay?
Yes, keep it
so
simple.
That should really apply to the Income Tax Act, right? But, and...
One of your principles in the Economic Charter speaks to simplifying the tax code.
The Economic Charter is basically based on 7 economic principles, okay? One is, a country should not have debt.
How do you see us eliminating the debt? You said over a span of 20 years we can eliminate the debt. For myself, a mother of 2 children, we're in a dual income household, and I worry about the state of this country and what future my kids are going to have and what opportunities, especially with such a massive looming debt.
Well, it's very massive and it gets bigger every year, right? So we got to think, well, how do we pay back the debt? We leave a gigantic mortgage to our children and grandchildren. So, which is totally, it's hard to imagine, right? I mean, it's how things like that can happen, right? So, but you can't fix anything with a chainsaw, right? You must sit back and clearly think, what are the solutions to the problems, right? If something doesn't function in your personal life, or for business, in your business life, or in the country, you should know you got a problem. If you don't know you got a problem, you really have a problem. Problems have to be eliminated, right? So basically, I'm saying we should be able to reduce the debt in 20 years. That means 5% a year, right? It's doable, okay?
Why isn't anyone doing it?
Well, it's because I think the world is still driven by the golden rule. You don't learn in universities about the economy or in high school or any place. You don't learn, okay? Because if the working class would know more about it, right? They would never vote. They would change the system. They would uprise, but we gotta be careful, right? We don't need a destructive revolution. We need a revolution of the mind.
How do we spark a revolution of the mind?
The revolution of the mind, again, timing means everything, right? In life, in your personal life, in the life of a country, timing means everything. And as I said earlier on, we might enter in a great recession, maybe the worst, right? And the signs are there, the food lines are increasing,
the prices of food are exorbitant.
Mothers worrying, how do I feed my kids next week? So the times are there. I think the fridges are becoming half empty.
Yes.
You see, when things don't work or when people are hungry, then people will listen, and it's got to be grassroots, right? But the very thing is, do we have solutions to avoid destructive revolutions? And I think the Economic Charter of Rights will be a revolution of the mind by changing things in a business in a fair way.
Do you think that with the fridges being half empty, do you think Canadians are going to want more government intervention to help them? How can we get Canadians thinking that they could fight for their own economic freedom without the help of the government, without all of the bureaucracy?
People got to be made aware of. Governments can't give you anything unless they take it away from you in the first place. And in that process, they would waste maybe about 80%. So that's why when politicians want to be re-elected and they borrow huge amounts of monies, but that doesn't solve the problem. That makes you get deeper and deeper in the hole, right? The same thing in your personal life. If you borrow more and more, you get deeper and deeper in the hole, right? There comes a point where you won't be able to get out.
You've experienced living in a communist socialist state. Do you think Canada is slowly heading into a socialist state with the level of bureaucracy that we have?
I come from a working class background, and the last thing I want to do is make it more difficult for the workers, right? So the question is, how can we make it better? How can we do a win-win-win, right? What do we have to do to create better living standards, right? When I look back with the last 50 years, I think our living standards deteriorated maybe 50% over 50 years ago.
What led to that deterioration of our living standards?
Well, what it does, our bureaucracy is growing too much, because bureaucracy doesn't make products, right? Bureaucracy, there's so many rules which, yes, in a society you need rules, but there comes a point where we micromanage, right? And the same thing, when you have a family, you have kids, you constantly worry about the kids. When you look out the window and they're out on the playground, they're climbing up the tree, you yell out there, but you cannot micromanage that you couldn't lock them up in a rubberized room and say, look, this way they don't get hurt, right? So you want to teach, you want a thing here, but even in the economy, it's even, the economy is like it's like cholesterol, right? I mean, if the cholesterol builds up in your body can't function, right? And this is, we have so many regulations that the economic arteries are completely blocked, right? Okay, and it takes forever to get permits.
And do you believe that's one of the reasons, the inflated bureaucracy that we have, that has made the living standards plummet to the point that they have? A single income household, you're not buying your own home.
See, Canada is a civilized country, and we like to live in a civilized country. In a civilized country, every citizen got the right to find a job, whatever the openings are, right? So in essence, I'm saying when the government grows, right, the harder a bureaucrat works, the more bureaucrats he's going to create. Mm-hmm. So that means more and more bureaucrats are hired, and the more bureaucrats you have, the more cumbersome it is to make something, right? So we gotta. There's a lot of statistics. I read the statistics last year, right? And I remember 3 countries, right? Okay. When you get older, sometimes you don't remember everything, but you try. The key is when you get older, you got to try to focus what's important, right? But I remember 3 countries. Canada, it's got 100 bureaucrats per 1,000 people.
Wow.
The United States got 70 bureaucrats per 1,000 people. And Japan has 40 bureaucrats per 1,000 people, right? So when I look back, when I built my first factory, I thought maybe we had about 10 bureaucrats per 1,000 people, okay, when things really were flourishing. Society got more complex. Do we need, yes, we do need some rules. We need we need a workplace safety rule that nobody loses their hand or gets injured, right? And we want to have a rule that nobody would be allowed to dump poison chemicals in their backyard. Those are the 2 basic rules. But otherwise, take off all the rules. Give business the freedom to create things, okay? So we got to understand to begin with that small business doesn't make a lot of monies, okay? And so I think, but small business wants to grow to a large business, right? The only way they can grow to a large business if they make good products and hire more employees.
Which will benefit all Canadians if we
which actually governments will make more monies, right, with what we call the income tax, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And small business owners, this rule, they only take out very little, just what the family needs to live, because they want to grow, right? So yes, they pay taxes on that, whatever you take out, right? You pay taxes, but if you leave the money in, the more you leave in, the faster your business can grow. So we need small business. So basically, I want to do a wake-up call to small business. Like, if you love your kids, okay, then you gotta, over and above, you should love your country too, right? As I said early on, right, Magna has over 400 factories in 34 different countries. When we are young, we all hustle a bit to make some monies, that we can live in dignity, maybe help the family. But I guess when you get older, then especially for the last 10 years, I sat back a bit and say, what is life all about? Okay? And I came to the conclusion that we're so far away from having an ideal society. You see, over the years I've been on many boards of universities. And I criticized myself over the last few years. Frank, what have you done while you were a member of the board in a university, right? If I could have now, yes, I could bring forward more. What is the mandate of a university? The mandate of a university would be, how can we teach young people to have a more civilized society? But most of all, I think universities will be the ideal places where we should try to develop structures which could lead to an ideal society. There's no blueprint. You know, universities have great faculties in regards to medicine, and in regards to technology, in regards to art, but very little in regards to humanity, the most important thing. So we gotta take a look. It's a wake-up call, right?
Do you think an economic charter is part of the blueprint to a civilized society? You often talk about personal freedom not being enough if you don't have economic freedom to truly be free.
That is the core, right? It's when you take a look, you know, if you're not economically free, you're not a free person.
What does that mean?
Well, the minimum standards on economic freedom would be if a Canadian woman or Canadian man has worked for more than 30 years, they should own their own house, might it be a small house or own a condo, mortgage-free, no mortgage. It should have at least $300,000 in the bank to subsidize the old age pension, so they can choose in their later years their own road to happiness. But when you think, how many people do you know which would be economically free?
Not very many.
Okay, that's a shame. You know, we came such a long way, we got great technology, but we gotta take a look at the system. The system doesn't function. Okay, and do
you think 50 years ago Canadians had the opportunity to be economically free? Was there a greater opportunity for that?
Not totally, because as I said, the world has always been dominated by the golden rule, right? The people which have the gold. That's the key. What can we do to dismantle the chains of dominations? Again, very important, not a violent one. I'm not preaching or let's take away from the rich. I'm preaching employers have such a great capacity to create great things. And let me give you an example. When I put in a corporate constitution, an economic charter at rights at Magna, where it says the employees get 10% of the profits over and above their wages. Our profits climbed the first year 40%, the second year 100%, the third year 200%.
Incredible.
Because when you let employees participate to get a portion of the profits in a tangible way, you release an incredible energy, okay, an untold energy of untold proportions, right? So the message I want to get at is, let employees participate. If we don't make capitalists out of the employees, the capitalistic system will be destroyed by the communistic one, right? And that's worse. So I'm saying the employees should participate in baking the economic pie. If they participate, everybody will get a bigger slice, including the rich people.
Yes, and you saw that firsthand at Magna, obviously.
Yes, I saw it. That's why.
Did you have any pushback when you first proposed the economic charter at Magna?
No, fortunately, it was not. When I proposed that, I reduced my shares, or my holdings, right? And the shareholders voted that at a multiple vote, huh? So the shareholders gained a lot, and when I put in the economic charter, right, we were so productive, right? We built 2 or 3 factories a month someplace, right? We had worldwide, we had over about 450 factories. So when we had the employees engaged and the managers engaged, it's just like we were so competitive. We could compete with anyone, right? So
So it was a win-win for everybody.
it's a win-win. That's basically, while I'm still alive, I like to, call it that wisdom or more the experience that should not be lost to the Canadian public.
You have mentioned that you want to see Canada as the first country in the world with an economic charter. Do you think Canadians can really come together and bring in an economic charter and change our trajectory?
Well, I left the economic charter just with 7 principles, and they're basically economic principles. So I think it should be possible to find a consensus. But most of all, I'm hoping that small business will listen to the words I have to say, because first of all, they could do so well for themselves and their family and their kids. And secondly, it'd be so great for the country, right? So we need, and again, there has to be a civilized revolution. The other bit, besides that free, I'm also saying we gotta reduce the bureaucracy. Not by firing bureaucrats, it's not really their fault. It's the fault of the system. But by having a hiring freeze, till we come down to a lower level, because basically I'm trying to solve the bureaucrats. Look, you have kids. Think about it. You love your kids. What do we leave them behind? How can we pay back that mortgage, right?
It's frightening.
Okay, so I think if we be civilized and go about in a right way, I think it should be doable, okay? It should be doable, or at least I hope so.
One of your principles speaks very dearly to me. I have 2 young children, the right to healthy food. Many families consider that a privilege to be able to feed themselves.
If you look, I think you got a leaflet in front of you with the 7 principles. I think we talked about the first one.
Balancing the budget, reducing government overhead.
Government should have no debt, or a country should have no debt.
We spoke about simplifying the tax system.
Yeah, no, that's the 3rd one, right? So we said the 2nd principle is we got to reduce the overhead, the bureaucracy, by having a hiring freeze, right? Okay. The 3rd one we talked was the tax system. It's got to be, people should understand, so it's not convoluted, right? No country can function if the people don't understand the laws, right? Okay. So that's 3. So we would be a number 4 now, small business, how important small business is, right? And I'm saying, when I take a look at the world now, you have 2 economic systems building up on the horizon. One is the communistic one, which is practiced by Russia and China. When you look at their systems, and I've been in China many times, I had factories there, I've been to Russia many times, I had factories there, spent a lot of time we put in, etc., etc. So I have a very good understanding on systems. So when you look at the Russian system, 10% of the population are the military. Another 10% of the population are what I would call the super bureaucrats. So the 20% tell the 80% don't step across the line or else. That means freedom is curtailed to a great extent. But we in the Western world, people gave their lives for freedom. Freedom is the number 1 thing here, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, but we have, so the other system is the capitalistic system. The capitalistic system if it's not slightly modified, is self-destroying. What do I mean by that? The capitalistic system, every day there's less capitalists. We have reached a point now where I think there's more statistics on the United States than there's in Canada. In the United States now, 1% holds about 50% of all the wealth. The 1% tell the 99%, you got all the freedom in the world. You're also free to be hungry.
Yes, yes.
That's the dilemma. Okay? So we can, via economic charters of rights, we can, right now the divide between the rich people and the working class is way too high.
Will an economic charter help eliminate poverty, and how so?
It's very important that by principle number 4, that we don't destroy, call it free enterprise, because without free enterprise, there's no free society.
You have to talk about fair enterprise. What is fair
Yes,
enterprise, and how does it function
fair
with small business?
enterprise, it applies more to, it applies to anything here, but basically what I recommend is small companies below 300 employees, let the owner decide how he's going to grow his business, right? You don't need government rules and regulations. Let the owner decide. We got to make sure we don't kill the entrepreneurs, right? Okay. So it means if you have less than 300 employees, if you're not going to pay the people which work very smart and hard, right? If you're not getting more than somebody which sort of does so, right? You cannot grow a business. So you gotta leave that to the thing here, right? He might do that by giving people bonuses, maybe profit sharing, maybe equity, but
So small businesses are able to decide how they want
in
to.
small business, government officials should have no say in small business. Just to do rules, workplace safety, and you cannot dump poison chemicals, but otherwise, let small business operate, right? That's the way Canada was such a great country 50, 60 years ago. Yes, there were concerns about the environment. Yes, there were, call it, each trade had their own advisory boards. Yes, there were trades that to avoid accidents, etc., right? But 50 years ago, an ordinary couple, maybe a school teacher or plumber couple, could afford a house, could afford maybe only one person working, right? I mean, we are way down, but we improved, we created so many technologies, right? The technologies are there not to enrich a few people, technologies are there to serve the whole of society, right? So we gotta get back to where the difference isn't that large, right? But again, when we take a look, what I said, the capitalistic system is self-destroying, right?
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that, the laws of nature are much stronger than any law. In nature, when a species does not reproduce itself, another species will take over. The laws of nature, like I said, are much stronger. And the capitalistic species, every day there's less capitalists. But I'm saying we should not destroy the capitalistic system. We should harness it when it gets large, over 300 employees.
So
Okay.
you're saying in principle number 5, once
That's
a business
5,
grows
yes, when
over
they grow.
300?
But the interesting thing would be that the owners of a small business, they grow, they would be very happy to share with the employees. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, but anyway, the very important thing is above 300, then there's a law where companies have to share profits with the employees, right? Okay, and so that will bring us now to number 6, the 6th principles. Basically, number 6, I recommend that high school should end at grade 10, at grade 11, and grade 12. We should teach young people how the trades would work. Huh? I think this will be a great source for young people. It will give them extra knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the higher your income would be, right? So we got to say, so it's a win for the students, and it would be a win for society, because it'd be so difficult now to get somebody which could fix the fridge or the windows or the doors or whatever. Look, there's a shortage of tradespeople, right? So to create, when you have a win-win situation, right, why don't we do it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, you can never go wrong with learning extra skills, but with the trades, oftentimes we're taught you need to go to university to have a successful career, but it looks like the trades are going to play a greater role in Canada's prosperity. Do you think that is the case?
Yes, absolutely. Like in trades, it would be a lot easier to get into your own business, right? Okay. And but let it be. If somebody wants to go to university after finishing grade 12 in the trades, right? So go to university. But I think a lot of people would like to stay in the trades. But let me give you an example, right? Magna, when I ran Magna, was a very decentralized company, right?
And by what do you mean by decentralized for
By
people that don't know how
decentralized,
Magna functioned?
We had some basic rules where a manager has to abide by, but then we gave the manager a chance. When he saw an advantage, he could run under the corporate umbrella.
So each factory ran as its own small business?
We might say it was its own factory, right? Mm-hmm. Was its own. It had its own manager, its own president, its own, its assistant. So when they saw a disadvantage, the manager of the factory, I should say, I curtailed the size about 300 people.
For each factory?
For each factory, for the simple reason, when you go with 300 people, then people become a number. It's very difficult to manage, right? And people don't like to be a number, right? If the foreman can't remember anymore, hi Joe, hi Johnny, hi Mary, or whatever, right? You lose the thing here, right? So it's so we gave them, let me give you an example, right? Yes, we are one of the largest buyers of steel in the world, or plastics, etc. We had a coordinating team which gone to steel mills and say, what's the price for 5,000 tons of steel, 10,000 tons of steel, 20,000? And we recorded that, and we let our people know if you buy from XX sources, you will get a big discount. But we never told them they have to. For the simple reason, no, we could not fire a manager at Magna if he didn't break the law and he made a profit, okay? So, but if they break the law, we could fire if a manager didn't make for 2 years a profit, right? But so anyway, so we were totally decentralized. So let me give you an example. A manager came to me once, he run a factory, make good profits. He said to me, Frank, I would like to make more profits, more monies. Well, I said, that's nice to hear. It's nice to hear. But it shouldn't be difficult if it be smart. No, he says, you limit me to only have 300 employees. I want to have more employees. I said, no, that would not be, because employees would become a number. But I'm saying, that doesn't mean if you just leave, you should be able to make a lot more money. So he said, what do you mean by that? So I had to tell him, look, if you replace yourself, if you groom the assistant manager, become the manager, if you replace, you get a cut of the profits from your first factory. So we, over the years, we had people which replaced themselves 10 or 15 times. Some of them, they made 10 million or 15 million a year profits or bonuses. And no lawyer, and our lawyers at Magna were highly paid, were financial, nobody makes this money than the great technician that treats people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's yes. So we coming also, we said from time to time, there's two issues that we should maybe, we have one more principle to go.
So this principle is really dear to me because I have 2 young children,
yeah.
and I oftentimes see other families struggling to feed their children healthy organic food. Your 7th principle would like to see Canada be the first country of the world to have a national food program that's providing breakfast and lunch that's organic and healthy for all Canadian children.
I think I've seen some programs where the Japanese have. I think it's lower in some areas. But basically, we got to look at our own country, our own problems, and I'm saying no Canadian kid should go to school hungry. That means breakfast got to be served. No Canadian kid should leave the school hungry. That means lunch has got to be served. And by law, those foods would have to be organic, because we got to realize about 95% of the food eaten in North America, includes the United States and Canada, comes from industrial farms. In industrial farms, you see no more eagles fly. Why? There's no more rabbits. There's no more pheasants. We spray so much fungicide and pesticides, we practically kill everything. It gets into the air, we breathe the air. It gets into the water, we drink the water. It gets in the soil, it gets in our food. So that's why it's so important. So I think...
How would we offset the cost of a national organic food program?
Well, we offset it because we got to realize that the medical costs are in the billions. So basically, my recommendations, it's not part of the 7th principle, right? But it's something where government should take a look and should adopt. Where family farms have always been, small business and family farms have been the backbone of the country. A country which could feed its people never had a problem. We have problems coming up because we can't feed anymore our people, right? So thereby, family farms would need a subsidy. I really wouldn't call it a subsidy because if we would feed our young people organic food, we could save billions of medical costs, okay? So if family farms would farm organic food, they would maybe get so much an acre, right? Or get a bonus if they do that. So that would be, again, a win-win situation, right? First and foremost, our aim got to be, do we raise our kids healthy? Not only the rich people, I think the rich people are more aware how important organic food is, but the masses, right, they may, and working class people which haven't, where organic is a little more expensive, right, but it's all our kids should have a chance to succeed on an equal basis.
Yes, and be healthy and happy.
Yes, yeah, the very key, we gotta preach that, to be healthy and happy.
So final question, Frank. If you were speaking directly to parents like me, hardworking, I have 2 kids, we're trying to provide the best life and future for our kids, but we're worried about the future in Canada. What message would you like us to take away from your vision for Canada's future?
Well, that if you know business people, if you gotta look, it's gotta be what we call grassroots, right? A grassroots where conditions, when you had revolutions, right? Yes, it was grassroots, or the conditions were so bad, or the hunger was so great. So I want to make sure no destructive revolutions, a revolution of the mind. We gotta tell people, if the politicians, they got to sign a pledge form. If they be elected to Parliament, they would vote in the House of Parliament that the economic charter would be part of the Canadian Constitution. Okay? So that's what I gonna, everything here, every household, every mother, everything should know, should have a copy of what are the basic principles and how they can participate. And how can they, the more important, they should understand that, but how could they, how would they understand what they have to do? They would have to go to their, call it political representative and say, sign a pledge form that when...
We want all political candidates
yes,
to support and endorse the Canadian Economic Charter.
Because this is not a political party, this is not a political movement, this is an economic movement to get Canada on a sound economic basis. Okay? There's no way a household could be in a sound if they have a huge mortgage which you can pay and not enough money to buy food. Okay, so we need a country which, you know, its people not going hungry and which people would have reasonable living standards.
And the timing is now.
The timing is unfortunately that it has to get, you know, we don't wish, I mean, if it would have been run better, you know, we wouldn't be in that situation. But we gotta be aware. To me it is, we're sailing on the Niagara River when we're on a boat, partying on a Sunday afternoon. We're hearing the falls, the rushing sounds of the falls, and we still keep on partying.
Yeah.
We go over the thing here, right? So we are, and my main thing would be to aware municipalities, because municipalities take the brunt of it on the first line, on the front line, because Ottawa is Ottawa, right? They have all, regardless, they just write a check, right? And the same with the provinces, but they get the checks from the national board, right? Okay, but the municipal don't get. They have gotta have.
And they're closest to the people.
Yeah, they gotta have. First of all, they can't make it that, right? And they're closer to the people, right? If people are hungry, they know the people in such a house, or this area, you know, hunger or the food lines are just huge, right? So they know, right? So basically the thing here, I like to start where mayors and councillors of cities say, yeah, we'll support the economic charter because we better prompt if things don't work. And things don't work, it starts with the national government and it starts with the provincial government. And also the municipal government's gotta be aware that we gotta reduce bureaucrats. But again, we not be frightened people with a chainsaw, with fire thing here. We limit the growth, huh? You know, if somebody retires, a hiring freeze, right? Till we reach a reasonable regulations what a civilized country needs, huh? Okay.
And this is the blueprint.
That's the blueprint to get economic. Politically, there's a lot of things yet to be done, right? Okay, but this, you know, let the politicians let them talk about it. There's so many issues from abortion to, I mean, there's so many issues, right? Okay, let that be to medical, to pharmaceuticals, there's so many issues which needs to be dealing with. But let's get the economy out of the way. So, and again, over the years, I've met with all politicians. Basically, they've got people, they mean well. But we have created a system. They're trapped in the system. They can't do it. They're trapped. Because basically what it boils down, especially the young politicians coming in, I want to change the country. I want to do things. The older politicians say, no, you cannot say that. Anything new could be criticized. Anything new, and so...
But if every Canadian supports and endorses the Canadian Economic Charter, we can bring about change.
The economy, we could bring about that the 7 economic rules could be adopted, could be law, could be part of the foundation of the...
Thank you, Mr. Stronach. Okay. This is an incredible initiative that you brought forth.
So again, the important thing is governments, the politicians must have balanced budgets, and they must take the red tape of small business. And small business should not pay a business tax, okay? Because we gotta get small business started. Let's give them the freedom. Let's give them, go make things. Start hiring employees. Go to the department stores and see, we could make the product. We don't have to import it from China or any other place. Let's get going.
Let's reignite Canada.
Let's ignite Canada.
Incredible, Mr. Stronach. Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss the Canadian Economic Charter Initiative Foundation with us. If you'd like to sign on or learn more, go to economiccharter.ca. Thank you.